how are you? Everything okay?
I'm fine. Yes, everything's great. Everything's fine. New album out. I'm happy.
Yeah, your brand new album, Dystopia Part 2, has just been released. How have the reactions been so far?
Very good. Very good. I mean, both from the press and from fans. So far so good. Can't complain.
Yeah, and were you expecting such a warm welcome to this album?
I mean, you never do, but you always hope for it, of course.
Yeah.
And you're spending a year and a half making an album. So of course you kind of wish the reaction will be great, but you never know. So but this time, yeah, we hit jackpot. So everybody seems to be happy about it. So yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, and one thing that's really interesting is that this album is the sequel to your last album, to Dystopia Part 1, that was released in 2020. And
Yeah.
why have you decided to make a sequel to that album?
I mean, it's been planned like that from the very beginning.
Yeah, you planned it like that.
So we knew because the album is a concept album based on Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, and we knew from the very beginning. I mean, so we couldn't fit the entire story into one album. It was impossible. So the plan was to release two albums or double album to make room for everything. But the thing is, the pandemic happened, and it became very impractical. So we decided to separate them, do it like put out a part 1 and part 2 later. As was more practical because mostly because we prefer to record our albums in the same place, in the studio in Copenhagen. And of course, when we were finishing or in the middle probably of part 1, it was obvious. It was very hard to do because there was switching restrictions from country to country, and you were not allowed to fly in or fly out, whatever. I mean, it was very complicated. So instead of fighting this thing and delaying the release of the project, we said, okay, we'll put part 1 out and later on part 2. And actually it played to our favor because the atmosphere of the second album is slightly different compared to the first one, because in a book or whatever action movie, whatever you're watching, obviously towards the end of the story there's more action, so it used to be more dynamic or more aggressive, or whatever you want to call it, so that's the main difference between part 1 and part 2. We kind of like building the tension up on part 1, and a part 2, it's getting a little bit more in your hair. It's because it's basically encoded in the book, in the story. There's much more action by the end of it, or the second half of it, and it sounds like that. So that's why those two albums, they're playing so well together.
And they were meant to be a double album, right? So some of these songs were already written by 2020, right?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say songs were written. We had kind of schematics. Yeah, we have like schematics how the second part will develop. We have some lyric ideas. We had even some of the production values were already encoded in part 2, and it was very easy to decide because we already heard the part 1, so we can just like continue from there. So no songs written, but a lot of stuff just sitting there, already pre-planned.
And it also helped those projects of songs to grow, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It was great. And then again, by the time we started recording part 2, the pandemic was more or less over. So we can travel again, and DC can fly over to Copenhagen, and so we can record it here, so face to face instead of doing it through the internet. I'm not a big fan of that, you know. So you have to do that sometimes, but I'll prefer to work with people sitting around.
Yeah, and it's not easy for Royal Hunt as a band, also because you have an American singer, and he's living
Yeah,
currently
it's one of
in
the.
the
I mean,
US.
when you don't have a pandemic, it's not a problem. You know, buy a
Yes,
ticket and you fly over. It's like 8 hours, so you hear it. You know, so it's not that complicated nowadays, anyway. You know, but
yeah, but
yeah, so I'll prefer that. It's there's something to be said about band recording together. Maybe not necessarily all five of us together, but recording together, the same room. Something happens. I don't know what it is, but something happens, and usually recordings coming out better that way.
yeah, also because all the members are gathered, and all the members can have a new perspective on the songs and suggest
Of
new
course,
ideas.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Everybody chips in, you know, and it's so immediate. You know, through internet, you have to send files, and then you comment on the files, and back and forth. You know,
Yeah,
it's more complicated. Here, I mean, everything, all the changes happening immediately on the spot. You know, be it the guitar or singing or whatever it is. You know, so it's much better, much quicker, and the result. The most important thing is the result is better.
yeah, it is. And one other thing is that maybe, I've noticed that this album has some of your longest songs, including your longest song ever in Scream of Anger. Maybe that's also connected, because you let those projects of songs to grow during the pandemic, then also you record them all together. Maybe it all
Yeah, could
converts
be.
to
It
one
could be.
point.
It could be. I mean, Scream of Anger, yeah, it came out like 14 minutes, I think. Basically, it's two songs together, but I started writing the theme, and then all of a sudden, I just realized the introduction of the song is like almost like 3.5 minutes. And I was just way too long, you know. So I was kind of started wondering, you know, if maybe it's better just separate them, do like instrumental part and then vocal part. Uh, and we actually tried to do that, but for some reason it just didn't work. It worked as it is,
Yeah,
like just
as
like
a
one
whole.
piece in 40 minutes. It just worked better than even through you have like kind of like pause, kind of like a break in the middle. Still, it works better as one, you know. So we tried both ways, you know, and yes, I'm pretty proud of this thing, and I'm proud of everybody like Andreas, Habe, and Jonas, and DC. I mean, it's everybody, and Kenny, everybody who's been involved in recording this. I mean, it has such a flow. It doesn't feel like 14 minutes for me, anyway. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like 14 minutes. I mean, you can sense it's a longer piece, but I mean, it's not that long though. It doesn't feel that way. Yes, and of course, it's because of the guys. I mean, they made everything, every new part sound interesting and a little bit different than the previous
And it
one.
doesn't get
And
boring.
yeah, that's the most important part. That's the
Yeah,
most
that's
important part.
it's always hard to a 14-minute song to not become boring at some point, and yet you can do you did it.
Yep. I hope so. I hope so. Finger crossed.
Yeah, you did. I can assure that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and you were just talking about your lineup and how everything just flows, and how everyone just contributed. And one thing that maybe also contributed to that is that you've had your lineup since 2015. It's been 7 years without a lineup change. I mean, that stability has to bring some results.
Yeah, I mean, it's a basically, except for a drummer change at some point in time, it's the same lineup since like 2010 or 11 or
Yeah.
something like that. So it's for a while. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. You know, as I said, nobody likes lineup changes. Nobody does, unless you have really some kind of internal problem. Nobody likes that, but it's part of music world today. I mean, as people jumping from band to band, you know, it's hard to survive in this business, you know. So it's very hard to keep the steady lineup unless you freaking Rolling Stones or something like that. So So yeah, it's a blessing, and I feel very, very privileged working with this kind of musicians, great professionals. We function very well on a social level, and very talented people. And it's always a privilege working with talented people because they have so much input and insight in whatever you're doing. I mean, it's priceless. It's priceless. So yeah, so I'm a happy camper.
Yeah. Now, moving back to Dystopia and to Dystopia Part 2, obviously, because it's the new record. Can you tell us a little bit of the story that connects the two albums and how how the story of just one book became the two albums?
Yeah, it's one book, which kind of like pushed into two albums, and the first one ends the guy, the main character, started to change his mind about the way he lives and the world around him. And the second part starts from that point and continues to basically the fall of allegorically, the fall of a society he's living in the very end. That's a very short thing, but as I said, obviously I can't just like recite the book. I mean, it's easy to read it or just find a digest somewhere. If somebody is interested in the story, so you can actually find a digest on the internet, whatever. I mean, that's where you can understand what's going on in 20 sentences and stuff like that. It is possible, but it's a very dramatic book written in, I believe it was written in 1953, and it's very current today. And one of the things which we did when we were discussing the beginning of this project, we tried to see out this book. That's why I'm always saying it's like loosely based. We're following the storyline, but we're telling the story about 2022 or 2020 and 2022. And we're looking at all the events through the prism of today, because we have basically same problems what he was writing about. They just multiply in a process. So interesting project, but I'm glad it's over. It's a long time.
Yeah, and it looks like a very deep and dark story. Why did you decide to choose it?
It's first of all, it's just one of my favorite books. First time I read it, I think I was like 17, 18, something like that. And I don't know, by 2019, it seems like the entire world is a bit of a distress in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I met the word dystopia a couple of times in different magazines, newspapers. It kind of like indicated, in a way,
Written in the stars.
And people was using quotes from 1984 in other novel or Fahrenheit 451, and then I was reading an article and they were quoting Bradbury again, and they said that's probably the ultimate dystopia ever written. And so you know what, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's time, but it's always a hard decision when you're saying, okay, what if we'll do this huge concept album? I mean, very complicated, a big form, and I have this kind of like musical landscapes in my mind. So we were, I believe we were in Stockholm at the time, and the band was there, and we were sitting there and discussing this, and I came out with this idea, and we start talking about it back and forth. Everybody looked to have, it's a fancied idea in general, and then somebody came. It wasn't actually my idea to have guest singers on it, but then somebody said, why don't we invite some guests to play some characters from the book? So whoops, so everything just became even more complicated. Now you have like different people, So, but we managed, and actually it went much easier, much faster than I thought or expected it to be. Okay, I mean, one thing is I know all the guys who was involved, like personally, friends of mine, great people, great musicians, great people. So I knew it won't be hard. But still, when you're sitting there and you have like 4 or 5 singers involved, and all of a sudden you have this pandemic going on. How is it possible? How can we make it work? And it worked out. I mean, as I say, it took a little longer. I mean, on each album, it took a little longer than a regular Royal Hunt album. A little longer, but not that much. Not that much. So I mean, I was off the hook easy. So that was nice. Yeah, but yeah, it was an interesting decision, and all of a sudden, all the stuff started happening. First, the pandemic. We started recording album before that, obviously. Then the whole world is upside down, and then the war starts, and
Yeah.
so many things happen, which actually are part of the story in dystopia, So I've been busy for a while telling everybody it's not my fault. All right, it's not my fault. It's not my plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how a book that was written like 50 or 70 years ago is so adapted to
Materialized.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they start talking about fake news and censorship and rewriting the story and deep fakes and stuff like that. And actually, some places technically, they started burning books or removing them from libraries. I mean, it was unbelievable. It's like reading this book. I'm just like sitting with a newspaper. What the hell is going on? Yeah, so bullseye.
yeah, and it's funny how maybe from today's perspective, dystopia could be like the soundtrack to that book. In case there
Yeah.
was a movie, dystopia could perfectly like be the soundtrack to that story.
Yeah.
I think you should be proud of
Yeah,
that.
I could imagine. Yeah, I could imagine that. That'll be nice. By the way, somebody calls Spielberg.
Yeah. Now, moving on from the lyrical aspect to the composition part. How was your composition process to this album?
It's more or less the same as it usually is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I have some ideas. Sometimes it's a musical phrase or something when you sitting playing or just playing in your head. Sometimes it could be a headline from a newspaper. Okay, nowadays it's more like internet and stuff. It could be anything. It's a book you read, a movie you watch. So something appeals to you, and it creates maybe a sound, maybe a phrase, whatever, and then you start working on it, and just see where it will lead you. And most of the time, music and lyrics, not the finished lyrics, of course, but beats of lyrics, they are appearing at the same time, more or less, because it's hard for me to write music without knowing what the song will be about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, as I said, of course, I can do an instrumental piece, but if I'm writing a song,
But even an instrumental piece,
I have to, yeah, I have to know mentally where are we? Are we happy? Are we sad? Are we angry? I mean, what's happening? So that's why I have this need to have at least a couple of lines, kind of like leading me into this atmosphere, this feeling, so it usually happens like that. But I mean, writing these things, sometimes you'll be surprised. More complicated pieces could be written in a few days, and something very simple will take you months. So you just come back to it and rework it again and again and again. A lot of material get trashed. I'm not one of those people who kind of like collect them and put them on a shelf and say maybe I'll use it later. I just erase it. because by the time I tried in the beginning, everybody was suggesting that you should keep it. It could be a nice like chorus or whatever. So another song. And so I started doing it, and then I realized by the time I'm doing the next album, I take a look at it, and it doesn't fit. I mean, all of a sudden, I think I can do something a little bit more interesting. So I stopped collecting it. So I don't have anything.
Yeah, and now it doesn't fit, and then it doesn't fit. It's like
Yeah.
it's funny. Recently, I also talked to David Riz about the new Iron Eyes record. I'm not sure if you check that out. And he told we were talking about the same thing. You know, he was just saying you can't polish a piece of shit. If it's shit, it's
No.
shit. You can polish
Yeah.
it. You know, just
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
And, and even if you think this piece of music you just wrote is glorious, you might think it's glorious, but if it doesn't fit once or twice, you know, it's probably isn't. It's probably it isn't. So
it's better not to use it at all. Yeah.
No, it's just like out it goes.
Yeah. Now, you were also just now you were talking about the guests that you have in the album. Can you introduce them to who are they and which characters they represent in the story?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously DC Cooper he represents the main character, and we have this kind of destruction machine, mechanical dog, as it described in the book. It's Kenny Luke, and Alexandra, she sings for this Clarice character. It's the only female character in the book, and we have Mats Levin. He's kind of I'm making fun of him, saying he is playing the role of death. But it's he is kind of observer, very cynical one. Yeah, so you can actually say, yeah, he's kind of death, you know, or fate, if you want it.
Yeah, it's a part that fits him, I think. With his voice.
It suits him, absolutely. I mean, and his character, he loves it. And then you have Mark Bowles, he's I'll say he's kind of a alter ego to the or inner thought of the main character. So that's why him and DC, they kind of connected. And then we have Henrik Brockman, and he is this captain in the book. He's very speculating, mean character. So when you combine all of them, and of course in the book you have like more characters. So I bet, but then we'll have to do like 4 albums. You know, it was impossible. So we said, okay, we will keep the core, just like those 5.
Then instead of being Royal Hunt, you'd be creating.
That will be it will be too far out. You know, so we kept the core of the story. You know, and it worked. It worked. And so I know the guys, as I said, the guest singers, also Mark and Mats and Hendrik and Kenny and Alexander. I mean, all of them great people, and it was such a pleasure to work with them because there was no ego there. I mean, nobody's tried to outstage somebody, and nobody asked, "Oh, can I have like a bigger part?" and blah blah blah, this and that. I mean, it was like everybody was working for the character.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was very liberating because I was kind of I knew the guys, but still you always worry a little bit, how it will be. You know, it's just, no, there's absolutely no problems, none. So that was great.
Yeah, it's always great when something like that happens, because
when you work with good people and professional people and talented people. I mean, it's always like that. They actually more concerned about giving room to each other instead of competing with each other. You know, it's completely opposite mindset. You know, which
it's the team. It's not me. It's the project. It's the album in itself.
Yeah,
not,
of course.
Not my part.
Yeah, it's not about me all the time. You know, so you have to give room. You know, and everybody was great on that.
Yeah, indeed, it's nice that it was like that way. Now, moving on, one thing that I found interesting is that you created a crowdfunding campaign to finance this album. How did it go? Did you achieve all your goals?
Yeah, great, very good.
Yeah,
it's not the first one. It's not the first time we're doing that. And we did it for a while, and we have a bunch of records, and it just works. For us, it works. I mean, we have a very good circle of people who are very much into the band. Usually, they call it like a hardcore fans, you know. So I don't like the title, but whatever.
Yeah.
And they're following the band, and they're supporting the band, and they're very interested in what's going on and how it's going on, you know. And so that's why we're doing like updates from the studio. I mean, everybody doing that nowadays with internet and stuff, you know. So, but they very like a fly on the wall, you know. So more or less constantly, and we share our ideas and with them, telling them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and they have possibility to pre-order an album, which helps band a lot because there's a lot of expenses involved, and then you having it like upfront, you know, even before the album is done, you know, it makes your life easier. Absolutely. And in general, I like the atmosphere. I must admit, when we started doing it a few years back, I wasn't sure. I'm old school, you know. It sounded a little bit weird to me. You know, you actually asking people to order something they haven't heard yet, and technically you don't have yet. You know, so it was a little bit strange to me in the beginning. But then when we started this campaign, we're getting better and better each time, you know, and I just realized it's great, you know. People going in, they ask you questions, unusual questions sometimes, you know. And when you have time, you sit down and answer them, and and you can kind of invite them in, so they have like greater understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. It's pretty cool because previously, as I said, I'm old school, you know. I grew up with. And the first record deal we had, it was like 91 or 92 or something like that, you know. As you always had, first of all, you had like a record company between you and the fans, always. And then you have the press, but because it was pre-internet, so everything was very slow. So you were actually depending on journalists in that sense. So actually you'll do an interview and then it will come out 2 months later because of a deadlines and stuff like that, you know. So it was actually back in the day, it felt normal because everybody was doing that. Today you look back at it and it's actually pretty awkward, you know. So now everything is so immediate. So I started to like it, actually.
Yeah, it was awkward, but there was no other way, no better way to do it.
So. No, absolutely not. And you have to adapt to the times which are ahead of you. You have to, and a lot. And I just realized, which I didn't know previously, before we start doing the campaign, how many people actually interested in what you're doing, because you can have like a sales numbers, but you getting them later, like back in the day, you know, so say in 6 months or whatever, you know, and that way you'll kind of calculate your album did well or not. Here you have the response immediately, and
sometimes they can also change the outcome, you know, by saying
they could, and you never know if it did happen or not, because you just like following conversations, and it might one way or another kind of creep in, and whatever you're doing could be. Couldn't sell. So yeah, it's a new system, and it's actually, when you're getting used to it, it feels quite liberating.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the most record companies, I mean, whoever works with record companies, I mean, so God bless, you know, so they're probably doing well. But we had with Royal Hunt, we had this feeling that you know, you constantly limited. For example, if we did an album and the record companies, I mean, obviously the market is not as great as it used to be. for selling CDs and vinyls, whatever it is. And after a few weeks, your record company stopped doing the promotion, and then they concentrating on another album, obviously. And sometimes it doesn't seem fair. And when we started doing it ourselves, all of a sudden we just realized, hello, if we feel like doing this, we can just like keep going. Or even the things like the deadlines and stuff like that, because record companies always tell you by which date you're supposed to be done with the album because it fits into the schedule. Yeah. Here, we don't have a deadline. We're just like going along, and when we can see the project is on the way and we can predict how long it will take, then we'll announce it. Then we will announce the release date. We pick our PR agents, we pick the distribution companies, so we're in charge of basically everything. And of course, we're using freelancers, and there's a bunch of people working on that, but it's very liberating. So I was very surprised positively.
Yeah, and on which album did you start using crowdfunding campaigns?
I think we started like everybody else. We started on those, it was called the Pledge something. Mm-hmm. There was a platform like Kickstart and Pledge and this kind of thing. So we started there, and then we just slowly moved to our own thing. I think it was from this live album Cargo, which we recorded on this Power Festival in the States. That was the first one, because the record company we had at the time, they wasn't sure about like putting out a live album, and maybe we should wait and this and that. We felt like it will be a fun thing to do, because recording was great, so it was a question about like mixing it, putting it out. And we said, you know what, we'll do it ourselves. And we did. And all of a sudden it just worked, and then from then on, we kind of just like took over. So we took like more and more control of what we were doing. And I always had this North Point Production as a production company, and we hired different people for doing different tasks, and then licensed the finished product to record company. And now we're just like doing the whole thing ourselves, and it works, really.
Yeah. So North Point is your own label.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I found it strange, because after so many years on Frontiers Records, on Frontier Music, you changed it to a barely unknown label, but it's your own. So yeah.
Yeah, we've been on Frontiers. We worked with SPV. We worked with a bunch of companies in all these years, and I can't say anything bad about any of them. I mean, they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And but at some point in time, we just realized, it's just easier to do it ourselves. We're getting, sometimes we think we're getting better results because we can work on it longer. We have manpower to do that. We have more hours we can put into it. So why not?
Yeah. And you can prepare your albums better. Without as much pressure.
Yeah, we're not, and now with this crowdfunding campaign, so we're not limited, to whatever budget we're getting from record company. We administrate our own budgets, which are actually better, and so we can put some extra into these albums. More time to pre-production, more time to mixing, or whatever we're doing, so we can do that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Now, going back to Royal Hunt in itself, if you had to rate on the albums that you played in for Royal Hunt, on its position with Dystopia 2 be?
Oh, it's I can't say anything about Dystopia Part 2 at least, because it's still too close. I mean, I can't judge it objectively. But the first one, I'll say it's probably up there with the best. I won't say the best because it's impossible. Top three,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah. But then again, it's not correct to do that because basically fans supposed to decide those things.
Yeah.
Uh,
Each one has a personal opinion,
a personal, as I say, if we'll say probably number one, it's probably one of the least. I don't know, it's least popular. I don't know, but it's my personal is X, like the Sand.
Mhm.
Why? Because we had so much fun recording it. We decided to do it like in a very old school way with like old gear from the 70s. We wanted to kind of like recreate the 70s atmosphere. So I spent 2 weeks trying to find an old Ludwig drum set. So it should be authentic, you know. It was a lot of fun. It's not necessarily the best album we did, but one of the albums I had a lot of fun doing. They're changing, and then I think the Dystopia Part One was turned out to be great because I'm not listening to Royal Hunt albums that often, only when people come and visit, because the only thing I can hear, I can enjoy it. I can only hear mistakes and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
So I can enjoy it, you know. But then somebody is coming over and they ask, you know, to play something, so of course I do, and I'm trying to start speak loudly. Oh yeah. So so Dystopia Part One was very enjoyable to record. Sand was great. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, probably Show Me How to Live was a lot of fun
Mhm.
recording. That's probably in top three at the moment. It like tomorrow it will change, but
Yeah.
today it's like that. But yeah, so it's very different.
Yeah, but even in
So
those
yeah,
albums, do you still
yeah.
listen to them and listen to them only looking for mistakes and watch
Yeah, 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 yeah. All the time, all the time. That's all I do. That's all I do. So
Yeah, but I guess it's a a normal thing, like
I guess so. I guess so.
like the new release of Number of the Beast. Now we don't have a different song, not Gangland in front of Total Eclipse because it wasn't the right song. I'm not. I don't know if you saw that.
It's yeah. It's impossible. As I can easily judge somebody else's albums, no problem. But with my own, and it's shifting, it's changing. And then the other day, I might listen to one of the songs, especially because I'm not listening to our stuff, but when we're preparing for a tour, so I'm supposed to relearn some of the older songs. And all of a sudden, you listen to the song, which kind of like deep cut on the album, and you listen to it, it's actually pretty cool. This one is nice. Why are we not playing this one? And of course, then four people against you, and it's just like, no, we're not playing this one, we're playing that one. All right.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned touring, which are your touring plans for this album?
I think no. I'll correct myself. I know we're planning to start moving in March, April next year. That's a plan. I don't have dates, territories, nothing yet. But I know we'll start moving. Like our management is just like working on it at the moment, and I don't know how it will look like. But I guess closer to January, late December, we'll probably know. We'll probably know how it shapes out. I'm on purpose. I'm not getting into that. I prefer to have just a list when it's done, because all of a sudden it's called like micromanagement. So I'm starting to like getting into it, and so why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? It's easier. I mean, they're professional people. They know what they're doing. So I don't want to get involved. They'll give me the list, and we go through it, and we'll see where we're going and when we're doing it. The only thing I would love to do, I would love to perform the entire dystopia, and I know it's impossible to do on the entire tour.
Mhm.
Because I mean, with all the guests, I mean, obviously we probably won't be able to have all of the guests, but some of them, at least. That will be cool. But I mean, everybody have different schedules and stuff like that. There's too many people, and so. But if we could do maybe a couple of weeks performing dystopias, both part one and
Yeah,
part
both
two.
of them, because
And
the other one was
yeah,
also
of
in
course, of
2020,
course.
so you
Yeah.
didn't play any shows
Well,
for it.
we didn't play one show since 2020, you know. So performing both of them just for a couple of weeks, and then we can just like continue doing like a regular tour when we're playing kind of like, you know, greatest hits kind of thing, and a few songs from each of the dystopia albums. Something like that will be nice, but let's see how it will shape out.
Yeah, and that thing that you said with on the guests, it could be a great show, you know.
Oh,
Maybe
absolutely, absolutely.
maybe not a full tour of it, but you know, one or two shows, like special
Yeah.
shows.
No,
That would be a great
I would
idea.
rather have I would rather have like probably like maybe like 7 or 8 shows, you know, during like a couple of weeks. That'll be nice. I mean, so because of Japan and South Korea, they show some interest in that. You know, we have the one proposition from Germany to do the same thing, and probably we'll be able to do one in Scandinavia somewhere, Denmark or Sweden, and I guess, but we'll see. It's hard to predict, and then again, you have to have all stars align, you know, so everybody should be able to do that, you know. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it will also be lovely to see you guys in Portugal. So if the opportunity comes, don't
Yeah,
waste.
oh, that'll be cool. Yeah, with all the bells and whistles, you know, with the 50-piece orchestra and 30 people
Yeah.
singing backing vocals and stuff like that. Yeah, of course, the normal one, the regular.
Well, I think that's it, André. Thank you so much. It was an honor. Would you like to send
Uh,
any message to your Portuguese fans?
Absolutely. I mean, so I really hope I'll see, if not also, some of you in the spring of 23 when we'll be out touring. Fingers crossed. And but until then, give Dystopia 2 a listen, give it a spin. Especially now, it's pretty easy. I mean, you can go in YouTube or Spotify, whatever, it's everywhere. Give it a spin. Go back and listen to part one. I mean, so you can have like 2 albums, so you can get kind of general picture of the atmosphere of the story. I think it's worth it. Try it out. You might like it.
All right. Thank you so much. It
Thank
was
you
an
very
honor.
much.